How to Cook Well with Rory O'Connell. Proudly sponsored by Kerrygold.
I love cooking and I love teaching people how to cook. Good food is so important, not just for our health, but for our temperament, and it doesn't need to be complicated. For this series, I've created a set of menus which I hope you will try, either as individual dishes or as a complete and balanced meal. We're so lucky to have some of the best raw ingredients in the world. Let's make the most of them. Celeriac, with its mild and sweet flavour of celery, is a wonderful vegetable. It can be eaten raw or cooked, and in this next recipe I'm cutting it into matchsticks, dipping it in a light batter and making fritters. The fritters will be served with some salad leaves, pears, walnuts and perhaps surprisingly capers. The resulting dish is really light and delicious. So celeriac is a wonderful vegetable. Soups, purees, raw, or in our case, deep fried in a little light batter to make a lovely fritter. You want to get off the green tinged flesh that's underneath. So I'm paring quite heavily there, like that. And as much as possible, when you're doing a job like this, always try and have your knife going away from you. So if it slips down onto your boards. Just keep moving it around like that. So I want little sort of like julienne sticks or matchsticks here. So cut it like that, and they can be ready. And by the time you've made your batter, they're not going to discolour in that short period of time. So onto my board. So just backwards and forwards over them like that. Lovely. That's the celeriac ready. Now we're going to make a lovely batter, a light batter to cook these in. This is so simple. And I use this batter for all sorts of things, for frying fish, for fish and chips, for frying zucchini blossoms, for dipping aubergines in, all sorts of things. So a little flour, a pinch of salt, as you'd expect, 1 tablespoon of olive oil. So flour, salt and olive oil, and then water. And we're looking here for the consistency of thick cream. So keep whisking. Don't go too fast with the water. You don't want to make it too thin. Okay, so beat it well until it's nice and smooth. So you see it's like thick pouring cream. That's the consistency you're after. So that could be going into the fridge. I'm happy to use it straight away. So I'm whisking a little egg white, which I'm going to fold into the batter, and that's going to lighten this mixture and make it more crispy. It just needs to hold a sort of a soft peak, just a little wobbly peak like that. That's perfect. Don't let it go dry and edgy looking, just sort of rounded like that. Now this, we're going to fold into our batter. It's a brilliantly easy batter, and there's almost no other recipe I use for a batter like this. Even just folding it in with a whisk like that is very effective. So you see the way it makes it look lovely and frothy and foamy. It's kind of gorgeous, really. Now, over here, I'm going to fry these fritters in some oil. So I've got my oil in a pan here, sunflower oil. So I'm using a little thermometer, and I've got the probe going into the oil, and I'm heating it to 180 degrees. So that's heating up there nice and gently. If your oil is too hot, it will cook and burn the food. If your oil is too low, the oil gets soaked into the food, and then that's when deep fried food becomes soggy. But deep fried food can be lovely and light and crisp if your oil is at the correct temperature. So I'm keeping an eye on that. It's at 170 degrees now. I want 180 degrees or thereabout. In the meantime, the rest of the ingredients for serving with the fritters are some lovely salad leaves. I've got a lovely selection of salad leaves in here. There's one particular leaf I want to bring your attention to, and it's this one here, which I have some of them in here. This is called bittercress. And this is wild. This grows wild all over the countryside, and it's a member of the cress family, and it's a really, really beautiful, peppery thing. So keep an eye out for those little wild leaves, as long as they're coming from a nice, clean area. So I'm going to put in some pear. So I have a lovely ripe pear. Just cut the pear in half, lengthways, and then quarters and chorus. And I'm slice some of the pears in with the leaves. So I'm just doing enough for one person here. So about 1/4 of a pear per person like that. I've got some walnuts. Lovely, just freshly cracked, ideally. Pop some of those in, like that. And then I've got a little vinaigrette dressing with some olive oil, honey and lemon juice, all measured. This could be in the fridge. Have it in a jam jar, ready to give a quick shake like that, and then you're ready to go with that. And the other thing I have is a little mayonnaise, which may seem unusual to put a blob of mayonnaise on top of a fritter like this, but it's delicious. Okay, our oil is at the correct temperature here, so we're ready to fry. So I'm going to pop my celeriac into the batter, and then we drop spoonfuls of this batter into the heated oil. Once you know your oil is hot enough, that fella can come out, probably. We want it to be cooked through properly so the celeriac is somewhat crisp. So we're ready to put our salad together. So dressing, always a little less dressing than you think you need. You can always add in a little bit more. It's impossible to take it out. And then just a light little dress like that. And with a bit of luck, sometimes they land on the plate looking nice. So the fresher your leaves are, the better they are going to look for you. So this is lovely, delicious, meat-free, refreshing. You could have this as a starter, or, I mean, make a delicious supper or lunchtime dish. Actually, that salad, just as it is like that, would be already a very nice thing to eat. Now, over here, our fritter is cooking away nicely. It looks golden underneath. So I need to just turn it over and cook it on the other side, so it's going to be properly cooked through. All that will remain then is a little blob of mayonnaise on top and some capers. So the caper may seem like a funny introduction, but again, the flavors work really nicely. And the slightly vinegary and salty caper is a perfect foil for the sweet celeriac, the sweet pear, and the slightly sweet walnuts. So the celeriac is looking lovely and crisp now, and as you can see, it's got a golden colour. You could have 2 or 3 of the fritters in the pan at the same time, definitely, but don't overfill the pan. So have a look, see how beautiful it looks on both sides. Allow any excess oil to drip off, then pop it onto a little bit of kitchen paper, just to drain off any surface oil there might be. Give it a little turn. Don't know if you can. Lovely and crisp, gorgeous, really, really gorgeous. A little bit of salt. Like that. I like to try and rest it against the leaves rather than plonking it down over the top. And the final little treat then, may seem strange, but it's delicious with it, is a little blob of mayonnaise which will sort of melt down through, and a few capers. And that's it. Straight to the table with that. Meat-free, refreshing, delicious, very nourishing. I love this sort of food. I love a traditional roast pheasant with all of the time-honoured trimmings, but this technique of casserole roasting produces a very juicy result and is my favourite method for cooking this bird, which when dry roasted can sometimes be a little dry. The joy of this dish, apart from the delicious flavours, is that when you take the casserole lid off, the ingredients have produced a delicious sauce thanks to the pheasant and the artichokes. And really all you have to do then is carve it and bring it to the table. For the pheasant, I like to brown the pheasant a little bit in the casserole before I put the spice mixture on. I find that's a better way of doing it, because if I put the spice mixture on first and seed it in the casserole, then sometimes the spice mixture just has a tendency to burn a little bit. So I just smear the smallest little bit of butter. The butter with the spices is really, really good. And then I've got a heavy casserole with a tight-fitting lid. That's really important for this recipe because we want to keep in all of the juices in the pan. So just make sure that the casserole is hot enough, otherwise it'll stick. So just test the heat. Hear it sizzling? Perfect. So I can let that just fall in there like that and let it brown nice and gently. When I say brown, I mean a sort of a golden brown rather than a deep sort of hazelnut brown. The spice mixture, it's really a sort of an Indian spice mixture, really. I've got some cayenne, some roast and ground cumin, some sweet paprika, some turmeric and some black pepper. And we'll add a little bit of garlic, lemon juice, salt, and unusually, well not unusually in India, with a spice mixture, a pinch of sugar just to elevate everything. And they just all go in together. Add a lovely yellowy turmeric, beautiful colour, pepper, pinch or a quarter teaspoon of sugar, some lemon juice. Again, as you can imagine, the way the flavour of the lemon is going to be wonderful with these spices. A little bit of garlic, which I'll just grate on a microplane. Get a lovely sort of garlic puree like that. I'm just going to have a little look at my pheasant here, because there's certainly clouds of smoke coming up the pan. We're getting a nice colour on that. Really nice. That's absolutely lovely. I need a pinch of salt in my spice mixture, like that, just to lift the flavours, and then a little olive oil. And that's the consistency. So it's a paste rather than a dry rub, but at the same time it's not very runny. That's perfect. The vegetable that we're cooking today are Jerusalem artichokes, and these are really a fantastic vegetable. They go with so many different things. So we have simply scrubbed these, and then I'm just going to cut them in half. For some recipes you might peel them, but today we've just scrubbed them because I love the skin as well. I can't tell you how easy these are to grow, and for people who are not in a position to grow them, they're definitely becoming easier to find every year because people now understand, we all understand a bit more just how good they are for the gut, apart from the fact that they taste completely delicious. Okay, back to our pheasant. I'll turn off the heat under there, and now I can rub some of my spice paste onto the bird. So take some of the spice paste. It's such a great thing, this. Smear some of that just directly onto the pheasant. Just a generous amount like that. Well smothered up there with that lovely paste. Quite simply then, Jerusalem artichokes in a round, lid on the pot, your supper is ready. And in the pot, you have one of your vegetables, your beautifully cooked pheasant, and the juices that the pheasant and the Jerusalem artichoke have extruded during the cooking become the sauce. A scant amount of sauce, but deliciously, intensely and purely flavoured sauce. Such a good, easy thing. It's a moderate oven, an hour and 10 minutes. Lovely.
Get closer to your cooking with Neff, Slide and Hide, proud sponsor of How to Cook Well with Rory O'Connell.
The pheasant has been cooking for about 40 minutes, so I'm going to get the rice on cooking. So I'll have a little shallot in here sweating in a little bit of butter. You could use onion here, or scallion would work very well also. And I'm going to flavour the rice to serve with our spicy pheasant with some saffron. So a pinch of these lovely saffron threads, and also a little turmeric. So it's a small little amount, about a level teaspoon of turmeric. And I'm going to turn the onions very gently in that spice mixture, just for a moment or two, just to release the flavour from the saffron and from the turmeric. So I'm going to add in my rice, long grain basmati rice. And again, just turn that nice and gently. Don't overdo it, because you don't want to break the grains of rice. If you break the grains of rice, your rice pilaf, which is essentially what I'm making here, is just more inclined to be sticky. So it's a specific weight of rice and a specific weight of liquid. I'm using chicken stock as my liquid. It could be water, be very good. Vegetable stock would also be good, but chicken stock is going to give the most nutritious results. Pop that in, give it a stir, nice and gentle. And the other thing we need to just add in there to flavour everything, of course, is a pinch of salt. And then we're going to bring that up to a simmer and cook it on a really, really low heat. So my rice will take about 15 minutes to cook. You could leave it sitting in the saucepan, or if you want to at that point, while you're carving your pheasant, pop it into your favourite serving dish and put it into an oven, ideally one with a steam function on it, and that will keep it perfectly warm and in a lovely sort of steamy condition for about 15 or 20 minutes. Okay, I think our rice should be cooked by now. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, that looks really lovely. Lovely sort of individual grains of rice and stained with the saffron and with the turmeric. That should be absolutely perfect. And all of the lovely chicken stock we put in has been absorbed by the rice. So this is extremely nutritious. So I'm going to put the lid back on that pan to keep the heat in there. And we'll just check and see how the pheasant is doing, because that too should be pretty much there. The rice will keep in that pot, by the way, hot for up to half an hour, as long as you put the lid back on and as long as you have a nice heavy saucepan. Now, there we go. So at this stage, in this pot, remember all we put in really was the pheasant and the artichokes and the semi-dry, sort of slightly sticky looking spice paste. But this now should have made absolutely delicious cooking juices. which it has, and the cooking juices are simply the sauce. There's nothing else to it. There's going to be just a small amount of the juice in there, which there is, but they should be intensively flavoured. So we're pretty much ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and carve the pheasant. So I'm going to just remove the legs first. So you cut between sort of the breast and the leg, just straight down there, like that, and then just push it, and it comes away really easily. Put that there. Now, with the breast meat, I like to take a slice of the breast, like that, with the wing bone. So cut between them. I like to kind of do a little sort of symmetrical thing there. You probably won't be so worried about that at home. Now it's starting to look quite nice. And our artichokes are completely tender like that. We've got a wonderful colour coming from the turmeric. The ideal herb here is coriander, because the lovely dry flavour of the coriander cuts through the spiciness of the spice mixture. And then the perfect accompaniment is what's still in our other pot, which is our saffron flavoured rice. That's been sitting there for a few minutes, beautifully stained, lovely and steamy, extremely nutritious. I mean, this rice, you could sit down and have a bowl of that on its own. Simple meal using lovely Irish wild pheasant and Indian spices and saffron and all those other lovely things. You could possibly put a little coriander on your rice as well. If you wanted to, we'll put just a little bouquet at the side. Makes a lovely meal, nutritious, delicious, perfect. It is always a bit risky for a cook to take a classic recipe such as this next one for a Sicilian cake called Casatta and to give it a few twists and turns. Will these turn out to be an improvement on the original version? That is for others to judge. Personally, I'm delighted with it. It makes a lovely end to an autumnal meal, but I would be happy to see it in any season when a few rose petals are available for the final flourish on top. I think it would make a heavenly light summer wedding cake. For this cake, really essentially a simple whisked up sponge, but in this case we enrich it with a little bit of butter, and that is how you get the classic Genoa or Genoese sponge, as it's also sometimes called. Begin by whisking the eggs. So I'm going to beat the eggs just for a moment. Just beat the eggs just for a moment or two. You're not trying to make them really fluffy or anything, and then you can go ahead and add in all of the sugar in one go pretty much. So after 10 minutes of whisking, this is what you're left with, a beautiful air-filled, sort of a mousse really. So just tap that gently, because you're trying to keep as much of that air as possible, against the side of the bowl. And now I can add in the rest of my ingredients. So flour, which I like to add in 3 increments. So just dust it in, and then fold it over, and then give the bowl a 90-degree or quarter turn. Just keep going like that. And when that's mixed in, the next increment, lovely. And just a lightness of touch is the key. Okay, that's pretty good. That's all the flour in. Now, my melted butter, which has cooled, okay, just pour that in, pour it down the side like that. I'm not sure how much that matters, to be perfectly honest, but that's the way I was taught how to do it, and I believe it because it works. And then a teaspoon of vanilla extract, just to add a little extra flavour to the cake. That's pretty much that, a little bit of butter there. I don't want to overdo it. Into my prepared tin, and I like to drop it into the tin nice and gently, keeping as much of that fluffy air as possible. It looks gorgeous, I must say, at this stage. So this cake now goes into the oven for about 20 minutes. So the cake is completely cooled and ready to cut and assemble. Now I'm going to make the ricotta filling. And ricotta and candied peel. Just cut into small little dice like that. This is homemade candied peel, which is fantastic, of course. A little caster sugar to sweeten it. And then 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, just to balance the flavours. And we're just very simply going to mix those together. Great, that's that. It's looking really nice. So not over mixed. The next thing I want to make is a little apricot glaze because we want the cake to have a sort of a shiny finish. We simply melt or warm a little bit of lovely quality apricot jam with a little bit of lemon juice. So it's a tablespoon of lemon juice. I have a dessert spoon in my hand, so I need 2 of those, like that. We just want to warm it to the point where it will pass through a sieve very easily. The next thing I'm going to do is to make the almond and pistachio topping for the cake. Some ground almonds, which I'm going to put into my food processor. This gives a really lovely green colour. So skinned Iranian pistachios. I'm going to whiz these to make them into a powder. So that's now my almond and pistachio paste. So a single drop of bitter almond essence, but you do need to be careful with this stuff. It is ferociously strong. There we go. Whoops. Maybe that was a second drop. Anyway, not the end of the world. It's a little sugar, a little egg to bind. Just a little beaten egg, like that. And this is going to become a sort of a thin layer of paste that goes on top of the cake, which we're going to split and fill with our ricotta. You see the way it's coming together into a, look like a sort of green almondy pistachio paste, which is exactly what it is. Here I'm using the almonds to roll the paste. To start spreading it. Sometimes it starts to come apart a little bit, but don't worry, just keep the faith. I'm going to use the template from my tin to give me the size I need for the top. Pull those to one side. So, the cake looking beautiful. We cut the cake in half. I'm using a serrated bread knife, just an old-fashioned bread knife. Trying to keep it level. You can go down low to have a look at it like that. How did we do? We did reasonably well, I would say, there. Okay, our lovely ricotta filling. Pop on. The ricotta is an essential part of the flavour of a proper cassata. That is pretty much that. Lid on, like that. Line everything up. Now, our apricot glaze. So remember our apricot that we warmed with a little lemon juice. So we paint the sides and the top of the cake with the apricot glaze. At this stage it just looks like a sponge cake. It doesn't really start to look like a cassata until we do this. Gently place it on top, lining it up nicely. Push them together. More apricot glaze for the top. I have large pieces of candied peel and I like to cut them into smaller pieces and they sit on really nicely. They kind of get glued in the best sense of the word. I'm going to put some more pistachios on top and this time I'm going to use unskinned pistachios. If you want to as well, you could just dab the top of the pistachios just to give them a little shine, and then the little rose petals. So I like to use tiny little rose petals, a few more little scatterings. All you have to do now, pop this onto your favorite serving dish, nice and carefully, like that. Make sure it's centered, and that's it. And for a wedding, a christening, a communion, or just any old Tuesday or Wednesday, that's a good cake.
Get closer to your cooking with Neff Slide and Hide, proud sponsor of How to Cook Well with Rory O'Connell.